The NFL season is officially upon us, 2 days away before actual football is played, and about 5 days away from San Francisco 49er football being played. I will be in Pittsburgh watching the game live. Cannot wait. But there's so much to talk about. Obviously, we've got the Bosa drama. That's how we're going to start the show out. But we've got to talk matchups with the Steelers. Who do we think is going to win? And so much more. We are going to do all of that next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, which means I've got my guy, So Real, Sunil, in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Just out here living the dream. It is finally time for some real 49er football. Off season is officially over. We are in week 1. Football starts, in 2 days? And gotta say, before we start talking about the 49ers, man, it's a brutal week 1 for fantasy. I'm saying, there's already all of these big stars that are injured, questionable, don't know if they're playing, all that kind of stuff. So for those that are fantasy freaks like me, it is kind of struggle city on who to start. However, when it comes down to it, it's all about getting that 49er dub at the end of the day. So that's what's really, really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting how fantasy football can change your perspective. I used to play in 7 leagues a year. Right now, I'm only in 1. It's a 2 quarterback league, and my second quarterback is Brock Purdy. So now I'm fully invested, right? It's the 49ers quarterback. He's my second quarterback in a 2 quarterback league. So we'll see how the whole thing plays out. But yes, definitely into fantasy football for sure. Down to the 1 league, because this takes precedence with any extra time that I have. All right. Let's talk about one Nick Bosa, who doesn't seem, at least at this point, that he's going to be making that trip to Pittsburgh, which really, it kind of has, at least for me, it's kind of put the start of the season in a little bit of a funk. I think a lot of people are a little bit frustrated with the situation. People are starting to get frustrated with Bosa. I think people were already kind of frustrated with the team, and there's so many ways we can dissect this. First of all, do you think that Bosa is going to be there on Sunday, or you think it's done at this point? He's not going to show.
Yeah, look, you saying that it's looking like he's not going to fly. That's something that I missed. I don't know. Was there a report about that, or those?
It just seems like tomorrow's Wednesday. It's the biggest practice of the week. It's the biggest, it's part of the install and all that. If he's let's say he's in Florida, I guess he could fly to meet the team in Pittsburgh. It just seems like they're still apart.
Yeah.
You're starting to hear rumors come out where the 49ers have made him I forget the wording, but it was like a record deal is the way. Yeah, which means the highest paid edge rusher, not necessarily the highest paid non-quarterback, which is what he wants to be. And that's where, you're starting to see the verbal sparring come out over social media, which we had hoped that it wouldn't get here, but it definitely has. So just overall,
I think
each minute that passes, we're this much closer to game time. You know what I mean?
Look, I think there's real concern for the 49ers to make him the highest paid non-quarterback, right? Well, I think we discussed that last week, and that's not an easy decision to make. I think a lot of people are pay Bosa, and obviously, look, we're gonna get into it, but this defense isn't the number 1 defense without Bosa there. So that's clear that there's going to be a severe impact that Bosa isn't there. But the reality is it's looking more and more likely that he's not there. So to answer your question directly, do I believe that he's going to be there week 1? I got to say right now, no. It would just be all hope and dreams that he is going to be there, but there's no evidence, or it doesn't seem like this is something that's going to be solved in the next couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. Jeremy says $32 million a year will do it. I would think.
I think he's asking.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what those numbers are.
Yeah. I mean, are we exaggerating? It's with the game's 5 days away. The game's 5 days away, and there's no contract that's imminent. I mean, at what point? I guess the question comes back to Mr. Laid Back, which your name is Mr. Laid Back. I feel like this is fitting, right? Like you're probably about as cool as a cucumber right now, but at what point is it not over exaggerating? Is it Sunday, an hour before kickoff? Is it after the game? Is it next week if he hasn't signed? Like, when is the point that it does start to get a little bit worrisome? I guess is the question. I don't know. I mean, I if I had a panic button physically, I think I would hit that thing right now.
I mean, and I think both of us agree that I don't think it's about him needing days of practice, because I don't think that. I mean, I think we both agree he's going to be in great physical shape. I don't think he doesn't really practice that much or need the off season, as far as he doesn't play in the preseason games and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just about him. Is that contract going to get done or not? So it doesn't seem like they're that close, right? Well, the last reports are $2 to $4 million per APY per year, which is significant money, right? And I'm sure the numbers are being hit, but Parag and the 49ers are trying to get it structured in a way where it's based off of playing time versus just guaranteed, because if you're allotting that much money to a player that is impactful but is definitely going to take a big large percentage of your salary cap, if that player goes down injured, that's a big deal. So I think with the size of that contract, there is a lot of red tape that needs to be figured out. And it's, as a fan, it's easy to just be like, pay the man. But from a front office perspective, from a team's perspective, there's a lot more to be thought about than just this year, I guess.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think this is one thing that I love having you on for is, me, like I get emotional around the team and definitely get heated sometimes. That's just kind of how I fan. You're very level-headed when it comes to these conversations, and often will talk me through it. And I'm like, all right, I feel a little bit better. But like, I'm the type that's like, okay, who the hell do we blame?
Yeah.
Like, you say it's not that easy, but I think it is that easy. So I feel like I want to blame the team right now. And let me walk you through why. The 49ers said that they budgeted for Nick Bosa.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick Bosa, if they had I think we all knew that he would want record money. Like, I don't think there's a shocker here. So the fact that now that's kind of coming out, I mean, we knew this. So if we knew this, the 49ers had to know this. But the 49ers wait a long time to start their negotiations. And my question now becomes, what if they had started in March? And I'm not saying that if they started in March that the deal would have been done. I mean, but I feel like if they started in March, then they would know where it was headed. And they could make a decision then. Like, you know what? This is too rich for our blood. Let's trade him before the draft. Let's get some assets that can help us this year. Or like, okay, we just got to get the deal done. We know where he's at. We've sat here now for 5 months on this deal. He hasn't budged. It's clear. Like, let's just get this thing done. So for me, I just look at the way that the team has historically done deals, and I feel like them dragging their feet in this situation with Bosa really kind of hurt them and has put them in this situation where, to me, I don't see how they have any leverage over Bosa. Barring Bosa getting hurt on his own, like, where is the leverage they have on Bosa? How did they expect this thing to go?
Well, so this is kind of how I look at it is, and I'm not necessarily like, pro team and all that kind of stuff. I'm about get your money, whatever you feel like you deserve. However, I look at a team's track record, and, there's certain teams that are out there that have the reputation of being cheap, right? They don't pay their players.
Yeah.
That's not this team. This team has reset.
Yes.
This team has reset the market on at every single position when it comes to the caliber of player that Bosa is, right? And we can name it. I mean, Jimmy isn't even the caliber player of Bosa, but they made him the highest paid at the time. They've done it with Trent. They've done it with Kittle. They've done it with Warner. So I don't think that this team, I don't think it's about making a record deal like with him. Now, Bosa is asking for something that I think the 49ers weren't prepared for, right? It doesn't seem like Bosa is just looking to be the highest paid at his position. He's looking to be the highest paid ever outside of a quarterback. And I think that's a little bit different. Now, to your point, the options are a lot less because they're waiting. They've waited so long, like trades and all that kind of stuff aren't as appealing now because you're thinking about, how is it going to impact this year because they're not giving up on this year. However, I don't think that that's even in the back of their mind, right, Jesse? Like, I think that they want to figure out a way to get Bosa here and play here. I don't think they want to give him up for any amount of assets because possibly, they don't feel like they're going to get a return on their investment when it comes to trading a player like Bosa. But I see your point, but I also understand that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they've always been able to get these record deals done in a timely manner in the sense that at least it's before training camp or sometime during training camp. So this is, I think it's easy to blame the team, but the team has been through this multiple times with players like Bosa's caliber. And I mentioned specifically Warner, Kittle, and Trent Williams. And they've been able to get the job done, and all sides were happy. So this is a little bit of a different situation. So I don't know, why all of a sudden they would break their norm when they've been able to accomplish this in previous years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me it just seems weird that they
can we answer this question right here? Then why won't they pay Bosa? That's what I'm trying to say. Is it's not. I don't think the deal is not making Bosa the highest paid at his position. Like, I don't think anybody's arguing that. That's not what the argument is right now, Sadiqa. It's about making Bosa the highest paid outside of quarterbacks ever in the history. And if we're talking about that decision means that this roster automatically gets gutted in the next couple of years, right? Like that's what the decision they're making. Hey, is Bosa worth losing Kittle, Juszczyk, Ayuk, possibly Diamador Lenore, like all of these other guys? Like, do you want to pay Bosa and only be able to keep pretty much rookie contracts at a majority of the other positions? Or do you want to be able to have the flexibility to re-sign your stars or be able to attract, new stars to the team? That's the real decision. I don't know how you feel about that, Jesse.
I don't disagree that that's the real decision. And I have an opinion on what I would do, but I think to me, that's irrelevant right now. What's relevant is the timing on this whole thing. And the way that I see it is this could have been avoided. I said last week that it is possible that the number is just too high and the 49ers shouldn't match. I don't know what that number is. I don't know how high that contract is, but I definitely think that it's fair that if we heard the numbers that we'd go, I don't know if I would kind of handcuff myself to a contract like that. That's not the issue. My issue is not the 49ers possibly rejecting that and doing what they feel is smart for the team or right for the team long term. My issue is the timing and waiting and not knowing that this was a possible situation. When you've sold the fans, and not only the fans, but the locker room, that this is a win now team, and now there's a real possibility that Bosa misses at least 1 week. I mean, that 1 week, realistically, Sunil, let's look at this. I mean, one game, let's say they lose to Pittsburgh and the game's close. And it's one of those games where, like, man, if Bosa was there, they would have gotten pressure on Pickett throughout that game. That game would have been different. We feel like we would have won that game. That one game may be enough to be the number 2 seed versus the number 1 seed. And now all of a sudden you go into the playoffs without a bye week, but you're a win now team. Every win matters. And even Debo lately has been talking about it like, hey, we need that bye week. We feel like that's important for us. We're a win now team, but that bye week's going to be crucial. And this is something we've talked about for over a month. My whole point is that, again, it's not that they're resisting signing Bosa for whatever he's asking for. It's that they could have known this earlier and made a decision that could have helped the organization this year versus being in this exact situation now.
True. You can't argue with that.
And that's the only issue I have. I really do understand if the money is a certain amount that the Niners would say no to that. I get that. I'm not one of these people that's like, you got to pay Bosa no matter what, blank check. Now what I am saying though is because you've waited, now I feel like you kind of do got to pay Bosa whatever it is, because it's either that or the rule is, and everybody's been saying 8 games. I can't find anything that says otherwise. The rule as I read it says Bosa needs to be rostered for 6 games. That doesn't mean play. Simply rostered. He could be on the IR. He could be on the active roster. But as long as he shows up by week 13, guess what? He accrues the season. And there's nothing the 49ers can do about it. They can fine him for sure. But if he's willing to take those fines, I mean, Bosa to me seems like the type that will sit 12 weeks. And I thought it was 8, and I thought that was crazy. Now I'm reading that it could be 12. That's insane.
Yeah, I don't know the details of the deal, but it does seem like this isn't something that's being resolved before week 1 at least.
Yeah, I mean, just an honest question. Do you think this team can win a Super Bowl without Bosa, being as win now as they are, and how much talent is on this team? If Bosa's not on this team, can they win a Super Bowl?
The easy answer is no. But I think it's wait and see, Jesse, because we have to see how much the offense is elevated with the continuity that's coming back from the offense, because I expect that there's going to be a little bit better offense. And then how big is that drop on the defensive side, right? So if the offense could level up to a point that, the defense doesn't need to be top 5, because I don't think there's a top 5 defense without Bosa. But if they could still stay top 10, but the offense moves into, they end up having a top 3 rushing game like they did in 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl. And, I think Brock Purdy is better than Jimmy G, 2019 version of Jimmy G. I think the receivers are better than that year as well. So, if that offense can make up the difference, I still think this could be a Super Bowl caliber team. But once again, it minimizes that room for error, right? I think Bosa gives you a better chance. But so if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet more on they're not going to be a Super Bowl winning team without Bosa.
Yeah.
But I still think that there's a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think the chance when we talk about the offense, and you and I think we both agreed on this a couple of weeks ago when we had the conversation that this is trending to be an offensive team now, which is crazy to say, for as good as they've been defensively. So it does seem to be trending in that direction, which I'm fine with. I think the difference would have to be, though, is it would have to be Purdy, right? Like Purdy would legit have to be a top 10 quarterback. That's I think that's the only way for the offense to overcome no Nick Bosa. A lot of people talk about 2020 and how the 49ers finished 5th in defense, which is true, but that's in yardage. And that's how the NFL does their rankings. When you look at points, they finished 17th. So 5th sounds great on the surface, but you finished 17th in points allowed, which is, that's you're a mid-tier defense. Lower mid-tier is what you are. And to me, points matter more than the yards.
And when we say Brock Purdy needs to be a top 10 quarterback, his numbers need to be that way, right? So him in this system, he has to perform in it. That doesn't necessarily mean that
No, I mean he needs to be a top 10 quarterback. And I think people should be able to tell the difference. Numbers are one thing, but I need him to be a top 10 quarterback, and we need to know it.
Well, if he's a top 10 quarterback, then
debate.
If he's a top 10 quarterback, then the 49ers are going to be, I think they win a Super Bowl, because that's been the missing link the whole time. And they're going to be winning a lot of Super Bowls if Brock Purdy's a top 10 quarterback, right? Because
and that's the whole thing, though. That's without Bosa, I think it's not a guarantee they win a Super Bowl. But in order to make up for Bosa, I think Purdy has to be that guy. And again, not statistically, I mean, be that guy. And everybody knows the difference, right, between statistics and actually being that guy. So I wanted to bring this up because I think this was a good time comment, and it's based off of something I was going to bring up as well. West Coast 257, I guess. 57,257. That's a lot. Bosa for Sauce and McDonald, who says no. The Jets reportedly have inquired about Bosa, and that was reported on the Jets end. Now, that doesn't mean that a deal is even close to being done or the 49ers are willing to even listen. But supposedly the Jets reached out. If they gave Sauce and McDonald for Bosa, who says no? Who do you think says no?
I find it highly unlikely that Sauce is on the trading block for them. But that's the only player I would take back. Like that, he would have to be part of the deal if I'm trading Bosa.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
That might be a move where it negates the loss of Bosa, because now you have Mooney Ward and Sauce Gardner on your outside. It's good. It's the cornerbacks that are going to give the defensive line more time to be able to get to the quarterback. Whereas right now the defensive line has been able to give, the corners more of an opportunity, makes their life easier. Right. Whereas, Sauce being part of the secondary kind of changes that. So, that would be probably one of the most epic trades in NFL history to have, a guy like basically the defensive player of the year traded for the rookie defensive player of the year. I don't think that's ever happened in history. I doubt that it happens because once again, now, even if they are inquiring, how much money do the Jets have to be? Because they're ultimately going to have to
They
sign
actually have
Bosa.
more money than the 49ers. They're actually in better shape to sign Bosa than we are. I had to look it up because somebody told me on Twitter that, or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, that there's no way they can afford him if we can't. I'm like, actually, they have more money this year and next year than the 49ers do by a pretty wide margin.
And they're in for sure 2-year window, right? So they're a lot more, I guess, their what's it called, trajectory is a lot more defined than the 49ers, right? The 49ers are still trying to balance youth and longevity with, win now. Whereas, when they traded for Aaron Rodgers, they know they have a 2-year window to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. And they've shown by their off season that they're willing to they're trying to make like a all-star team over there and just win one. So, yeah, I mean, I would, I don't think that trade happens, but it would have to be, I don't think that Bosa could be traded at this point. I think he just is either going to sit out and then play the last half of the season, and then, he'll be on a new team next year, or they get it done somehow.
Yeah, we talked about it last week that realistically trading Bosa now is almost impossible because you need assets that are going to also help you win now. And, one player we didn't talk about, you talked about Chris Jones and possibly being a holdup. Brian Burns is out there now too. And it sounds like he's holding in and may not play. So these pass rushers, whether interior or exterior, are certainly on the same page where they're waiting. They're playing a waiting game, and Bosa's likely the first domino that falls. They kind of, I'm sure the other two want to see where that is so that they can measure up against it. But yeah, this thing's getting dicey to say the least. So thought that was an interesting comment. The McDonald one, I actually, if it was the off season, McDonald in like some firsts, like I'd be interested in that. It wouldn't necessarily have to be Sauce, but right now, being a win now team, it'd have to be McDonald and Sauce for me to say yes.
Yeah.
Toby says all the wins don't mean a thing if you don't have that ring. We have been a win now team since 2019. How many rings do we have? That, sir, would be 0. If you just want a straightforward answer. Frank Tom Ocean says if traded, probably to the Jags. They have the cap. I haven't even looked at other teams just because I looked at the Jets specifically because that report came out, but I haven't looked at other teams because I just don't think that it's possible, especially to another playoff team. Because again, the 49ers are in a win now mode. If they were to trade Bosa now or before next offseason, they would have to get assets that help the team win now. The likelihood of getting that from another playoff team, usually playoff teams are going to say, hey, let me give you future assets for your star. We'll pay him. The 49ers aren't in a situation where they can take future assets. They've got to get something good in return, like right now that can help them. Mm-hmm. So CJ Beathard, there you go. That's the one right there. Now I'm excited. All right, let's move on from Bosa. Let's get into this weekend's game. And there's a ton of matchups. I mean, there's a million different ways you can go with this, Sunil. So I'll kind of leave it open to interpretation. But what are some matchups that we should be paying attention to one way or another when it gets to Sunday's game in Pittsburgh?
Well, I mean, I'm going to steal the most blatant one, and the easiest one is going to be the 49ers offensive line versus the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line, right? They have, one of the best edge rushers in TJ Watt, and he's going to be lining up against on the right side against Colton McKivitz. And we get to see from the jump, is Colton going to be an asset or is he going to be a weakness, right? And obviously the 49ers are going to be game planning for, TJ Watt primarily, but the rest of that defensive line aren't scrubs. There's definitely, talent all along that. And we also know the Pittsburgh Steelers pedigree is that defense is going to be good, on every single level. So I'm going to go with that offensive line versus the defensive line and really see, can this offensive line, kind of instill its will on a defensive line and still be able to run the ball at the level that they want to run the ball to open up that, that play action game that I know Shanahan wants to get to, and what Purdy seems to run extremely well as well. So I would say that's the one matchup right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely. I'll get a little bit more granular and we'll talk about Watt versus McKivitz because Watt lines up over the right tackle. Like that's where he's lines up primarily. So that's going to be not a matchup that you see here or there because they mix it in. That's a matchup that you're going to see a majority of that game is McKivitz versus Watt. And what do? Does George Kittle suffer because he's got to stay in and help block? Do they chip him? Is
George Kittle even playing?
Is George Kittle even playing? Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing in itself. But yeah, I mean, this is where it's at. It's Watt versus McKivitz. It's interesting because I think we're going to know very early on, not just the Steelers and not just big name players, but you've got the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Browns. You've got some teams early that have very good defensive lines. We're going to know how good this offensive line is very early on. Like all those questions that we've had this offseason, or a lot of people have had this offseason, those questions are going to be answered very, very quickly early in this season because they play some really good defensive lines. And the Steelers are no slouch. It's not just Watt. It is not just Watt. They have Highsmith on the opposite side who is going to get all the attention from Trent Williams. I imagine that's a one-on-one matchup, but that's a double-digit sack guy himself. So it's not like double teaming is not going to be easy to do with offensive linemen. They're going to have to help with tight ends and fullbacks and running backs and that type of stuff. I'm just curious to see how that whole matchup plays out. We're going to know a lot about McKivitz after week 1. That is for sure.
Yeah. And, on the flip side, I looked at the Steelers receiving core.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't they're good, right? Deontay Johnson, Pickens, and they signed Allen Robinson, which I forgot that they had signed. So they have 3 very, very productive receivers there. So we get to see right off the bat what Wilkes brought to this cornerback room, to see how they're going to be able, that nickel corner is going to need to play well, because they have 3 receivers there that all could be dangerous if our secondary is slipping. So I think, like you mentioned, that the offensive line we're going to find out about the secondary as well, to see if they have the right pieces, the right type of depth, and how they could hold on. And because these receivers have the ability for that big play type stuff, which has burnt the 49ers in previous years. So we get to see if they've cleaned that up a lot, or are they going to be able to have a field day on us?
Yeah, I would say another one that I'm looking forward to, especially if Bosa doesn't play. If Bosa plays, I feel good about it. But how do the 49ers edges create pressure against their tackles? And the tackles in Pittsburgh aren't necessarily the best. And that's why if Bosa plays, I love that matchup. But now all of a sudden, without Bosa, you've got some unproven guys there. You've got players that are younger. You've got some veterans mixed in there, but you've got Jackson, you've got Bryant, you've got Hyder. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of mediocrity, really.
Yeah.
And can they get home without Bosa against those tackles? I think that's going to be another huge one that we've got to pay attention to. So the 49ers edge rushers versus the tackles of the Steelers, can they get home and create pressure on Pickett?
Yeah, and the last one there's a couple more, but the Najee versus this defense, right? Because we've seen that the weakness has been the run defense. Well, week 1, we're going up against one of the better running backs in the league on a team that likes imposing their will, right? And they do that through the run game. So Najee's a high volume running back for them. He's physical. So are the 49ers going to be able to hold up against this rushing attack? Because much like the 49ers, they have a young quarterback there that they want to, establish the run to make the game easier for him as well.
Yeah, and it's not just him. Jaylen Warren's a talented back as well. And so they've got it there, they've got quite a 1-2 punch coming out of Pittsburgh now. So that'll definitely be interesting. I had that down. I said their running game versus our interior D line. What does that look like? Another one that I have is Moody versus his mind. So this isn't even a matchup with the Steelers. This is just, if Moody starts, and it does seem to be trending that direction, how is he mentally? The last time we saw him, he was shaky, missing kicks. Even the ones that he's made have been dicey. He didn't get to play in that final preseason game because he was injured. So now he's coming off of an injury. His young career hasn't started out that great. And for Moody, it's not going against anybody on that defense or special teams. It's him going against himself mentally. Can he overcome the shaky start to his career and that injury? That's something that I'm going to look forward to as well.
Yeah, special teams overall, but where I think the strength is going to be in this game is our receivers. I do think that our pass game could have a big game against the Steelers. I know not because the Steelers secondary are slouches, but I just think that because they're going to be so focused on CMC, that it's going to open up lanes for the receivers. And I just think that, Brandon Ayuk, I don't think he could be guarded one-on-one by any cornerback in the league with his ability to route run. Obviously, Debo has a different mentality. If Kittle's there, I think we already see how him and Brock Purdy, they seem to be on the same page. So I really look at our receiving core as going to have a big game against the Steelers. And I think they're going to need to have a big game if this ends up being a victory for the 49ers.
Yeah, they need Kittle. If they don't have Kittle and Bosa, I don't know that I can pick that 49ers team. I think Kittle's going to play. It seems like he was running on the sidelines, so I'm hoping that he's able to play, and I'll feel much better about my pick. But, man, no Bosa and no Kittle. I mean, that's a drastically different 49ers team going into Pittsburgh than what we expected for sure. Mm-hmm. The last matchup that I had actually includes Kittle. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I was just gonna say, and not even Kittle's passing ability, just his blocking ability is going to be extremely important when it comes
Yeah.
to this defensive line, right? So
Yeah.
him not being there, we lose a lot when it comes to blocking at that position.
I completely agree that in the last matchup I had actually included Kittle. It's CMC and Kittle versus Minka. What does that matchup look like? How do they use Minka? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with Minka. I mean, Minka is a extremely talented player, but if he's preoccupied with CMC and they can, use him as window dressing or Kittle as window dressing and kind of attack with other players, guys like Ayuk or the other running backs, CMC, if Kittle is guarded by Minka and vice versa, Debo, what does that look like? So I'm curious to see how Minka is used. I think Minka certainly can be a troublemaker, but with the 49ers, the matchups they throw out there, I mean, no linebacking core can be trusted to guard guys like Kittle and CMC. Minka's going to have to be busy with one of those guys. So I'm curious to see how they deploy him as well.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of doom and gloom over the game right now because there are a lot of question marks for the 49ers, but they still match up extremely well against
Oh,
the
yeah.
Steelers. I don't think this is going to be a blowout necessarily either way, but I do think that actually if Bosa and Kittle were there, it probably is more of a blowout for the 49ers because I think that they match up that well against, most every team in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of question marks. But if Brock Purdy plays the way that he played at the end of last season, I still think that there's a very good chance that the 49ers could get a win. I do think that this offense can put up points. And for all the negativity that's been surrounding this team in the offseason with the, Trey Lance and now the Nick Bosa and all that kind of stuff, what has been lost is we've stayed relatively healthy throughout the offseason. Majority of our starters are going to be there, right? The only two that are in question is George Kittle and Bosa, but continuity is there on the offensive side. Debo's healthy. Brandon Ayuk is motivated. And CMC is obviously CMC, and we're gonna have him not just for 8 games. We're gonna have him for a whole season now. So, to me, I look at this team as we're still extremely dangerous, and I don't think that this team can't get a victory. I think that there's still a very good chance that they come out with the W.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to give our predictions at the end. Bosa definitely brings it down a peg. Now, if I know, like I said, if I know Bosa and Kittle are not playing, I don't know if I can pick that version of the 49ers, but Bosa's not for sure not playing. So we don't know. It's not looking likely, but there's still a small possibility. And then I do think Kittle's going to play. So that helps maybe ease my mind a little bit, but we'll see. William Bennett says, I believe John York was hoping that we won a Super Bowl by now, year 7. I think we all were, and was hoping to move on before having to make this deal. Maybe that's a possibility. He follows it up and says, I'm over going to the NFC Championship. I want a ring. I feel that. And this isn't just the Shanahan Lynch era. I mean, this is the heartbreak that we saw in the Harbaugh Balky era as well, was constantly being runner-up, and that is not a good feeling. Frank Tom Ocean says, can we get 400 likes? Cone poll. Yeah, that's Grant's new thing, right? He throws out the poll and asks for likes. How many likes you can get to? That's pretty funny. All right, let's talk about Purdy or Pickett. Now, obviously, these guys are not directly playing against each other. They're going against the opposing defense. But it's interesting because Pickett was the highest drafted quarterback in last year's draft, and Purdy was literally the last pick of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I see it is there's actually a lot of similarities between these two. I know statistically, if you look at Pickett, you're going to be like, oh, this guy's trash. But the reality is, if you watch him play, you're going to see a lot of similarities in how he gets it done to the way that Brock Purdy gets it done. So the question is who would you rather have? Everything even right now, who are you taking, Purdy or Pickett, and why?
So, I mean, Purdy, I think, has a bit of a stronger arm Pickett has a bit of a stronger arm than Purdy.
Yeah.
But I think Purdy is a little more mobile and uses his mobility better. But I'm going with Purdy, not just because I'm a 49er homer, but I'm a Kyle Shanahan fan. And Purdy is in Kyle Shanahan's system. And I think that makes quarterbacks better than what Pickett has over there with
what if you could put Pickett in this system? Like, think about it like that. Who are you taking, Purdy or
with
Pickett?
these weapons?
With these weapons. This system, these weapons.
I take Pickett. I think the system gets I think the system is really, really hard to overlook, man. And I think so many people look. I mean, I'm looking in the chat section, and the hate for Kyle Shanahan is just, immense right now. I think that a lot of content creators, a lot of people have just started piling on Kyle Shanahan, and we're getting to the point where people are just like, oh, I'm tired of the NFC Championship games. I'm tired of not winning a ring and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not what we were talking about. Over the last 20 years, there's been very few moments where we were talking about even in the championship picture. So to me, and I think there's a stat that came out where it was showing, like, I think they were trying to promote the Thursday night game, and they were saying like Detroit and Kansas City were 2 and 3 when it came to how the system affected the defense, staying like defense in their mode, like making the defense scramble or whatever it was. And they were like, yeah, Detroit and Kansas City are 2 or 3 in their ability to make defenses react or whatever it was, which is like a really great stat. And by far, number one was the 49ers. It was like significant. So that's all Kyle Shanahan and his ability to scheme up and make defenses just have a hard time understanding what's going on with the 49ers offense. So I think that whomever is quarterback, and we've seen it, right? Especially when you add a weapon like CMC, like the level of it makes the quarterback position so much easier for anybody in there. So I look at it more like this system makes anybody look that much better. And that's not a shot at Purdy. Like, I think Purdy runs this system better than anybody has in the Kyle Shanahan era. I think that Purdy runs this system better than any of them, but it's still the system, right? I think that you plug in any any kind of comparable or what's the word, like competent quarterback, and they're going to be able to look very, very successful in the system.
Right at the very end is the reason that I would lean towards Purdy in this situation, because I feel like if I'm starting a team, I really do think it's close. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh God, Pickett sucks." He doesn't. Like, he just watch him play, break down the all 22. Like, he's actually pretty good. I think there's a lot of similarities there. That being said, Purdy right now feels like an extension of Kyle Shanahan. Like, they're just, those two seem to be, now my mind may change throughout the course of this season. Maybe it doesn't look like it did last year, but the way it looked last year, it just seemed like those two are a perfect match. And I don't know that Pickett's talent isn't so overwhelmingly good that I would allow that to override him over Purdy. So I'm looking, to me, at two similar skill sets. I think Purdy's a little bit more agile. I think as a pure runner, Pickett might be a little bit better. His arm's a little bit better. Obviously, his size is there. But I know that Purdy mentally can handle the pressure of a playoff run. I don't know that yet about Pickett. And I don't know that Pickett could handle the pressure of Kyle Shanahan. That's another thing, is for as great as Kyle Shanahan is, puts a lot of pressure on his quarterbacks, and he expects a lot from them. And we know that Purdy can shoulder that load. So I would have to go with Purdy over Pickett just because I know it can work. I'm not saying that Pickett couldn't, but with Kyle Shanahan in this system, knowing that it works, I would have to lean Purdy.
Yeah.
Ooh, plot twist. I bet you there's a lot of people in the chat that didn't expect me to say that. William Bonnet says, if they don't have Bosa, are they just the LA Chargers with a worse quarterback? I have them 9-8. Do you still think that's a bold take? I think I do. I think it's a bold take because I don't expect Bosa to miss the whole season. Now, if Bosa was going to miss the whole season, I don't necessarily think that's a bold take, but I don't think that's going to happen. And maybe that's just the fan in me hoping that it doesn't happen, but I can't see it lingering through the 12 weeks or whatever that he can sit out. That's tough. William Bennett says, if Kyle's so great as you say, why can't he get a ring no matter where he has went? 28-3. Stop giving him a pass. Yes, and Neil, stop giving him a pass.
At what point? When did you blame the offensive coordinator for the reason why you don't win a Super Bowl when they were able to put 28 points up in a Super Bowl? I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. It's just hate to bring out hate, right? Like, if Kyle is so great, why can't he get a ring no matter where he went? He had 28-3. Okay, he was the offensive coordinator in that game that you're mentioning, and the defense allowed however many points. I guess that's Kyle Shanahan's fault as an offensive coordinator that the defense couldn't stop the Patriots in that second half, right? So, yeah, it's right. You're right. Kyle Shanahan's trash. He also ended up getting off of that season giving an MVP year to Matt Ryan, who never has looked better before or after Kyle Shanahan was there, and also ended up the 49ers head coach after that season. So
I think, for me, when I don't know, when I talk about it and when we've talked about it, it's more that like there's strengths and weaknesses to Kyle Shanahan and his coaching. And I think it's pretty universally known that Kyle Shanahan as a schemer and a play designer is elite. Like they're legit might not be anybody better. It's specifically that than him. Andy Reid, I think you can make the argument for. Now, I think Andy Reid is a little bit better play caller, but I don't know that he's a better play designer. And Andy Reid has coached a lot of years in this league. So, some of that loosey-goosey play calling stuff that he had early in his career that kind of bit him, he's overcome and figured it out and has now become a very good play caller, probably the best in the league. And I think that's an area where Shanahan can step up. But say that Shanahan doesn't make things easy on his players, I mean, that's just, he definitely does. There's a reason that, Purdy and Jimmy were 1 and 2 and the most wide open receivers in the NFL last year, throwing to the most wide open receivers by a wide margin. Like he makes the game easier for his players. Now, that doesn't mean he's perfect. He definitely has his flaws, and I have no problem pointing those flaws out. And I think some of those flaws might be a reason why they have given up some of these bigger leads. But man, I think he's a top 7 coach is where I'm going to leave it. I don't think he's perfect. I would take other coaches above him, but I think he's pretty damn good also.
And I also look at just the history in the NFL, right? I've always stated that Kyle Shanahan, to me, his comp is Andy Reid. Andy Reid, if people don't remember, was a lot of the same success that Kyle Shanahan has had. And with the Eagles, constant NFC championship games, made it to a Super Bowl, but always lost, right? Could never, quote unquote, win the big game. Goes to Kansas City. They have success, but still can't make it past the hump. Till they're able to get this quarterback by the name of Patrick Mahomes. Now people are looking at Andy Reid as he's the greatest coach of all time, right? They're arguing, hey, how many more Super Bowls does he need before he's better than Belichick? Now, one thing that Andy Reid has in spades over Kyle Shanahan is his ability to identify the right quarterbacks through the draft and be able to develop those quarterbacks. I think Kyle Shanahan struggles with that and is nowhere close, but Andy Reid is obviously the best at that, I would say. But as far as a lot of the things that people criticize, you're only criticizing Shanahan because he's gotten to those points, right? Like all of those negative things that you bring up in those big games, he got right during the regular season, which is what got him, and through the playoffs, which is what got him to that point as well. And yes, when you're on a bigger stage, it's easier to criticize, and he has made mistakes. I'm not trying to say that he's not without fault, but what I am saying is with a coach that in such a small amount of time has had that much success, not only getting to those points, but also creating and changing a culture, creating a roster that he has, the coaching staff that he has. There's a lot of things that people just take for granted and think that, hey, with the snap of your fingers, things are going to change once you change Kyle Shanahan, where I think that we could go into we could be searching for another Kyle Shanahan for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do I really want to go down this road right now? I mean, the thing, my whole thing with that is that can't be a reason to keep Kyle, right? So I just spent a couple minutes defending Kyle, but for me, like, I hate it when people are like, yeah, but it could be Tom Zula and Chip Kelly. It's like, yeah, it could be, or it could be somebody really good. You don't know. Like, that can't be a reason to keep him, and I don't think he should get unlimited time to figure it out. But I do think that at the very least he deserves this year and probably next. I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at with it. It's hard to move on from Kyle with no for sure better option in the wings. And, you know, I fully expect this team to make the playoffs. Now, if they don't make the playoffs, okay, we might be having a different conversation. I think anything short of at least making the NFC Championship is really going to put them on a legit hot seat. But I think anything, and when I say hot seat, that means he's still got one more year. So I just think that, yes, we're starting to peel back the onion. I think there's a lot of things that we don't like, myself included, but there are still some things to like about Kyle. The Falcons fan was piling on. Val, I'm going to have to push back on this one. Andy didn't get lucky drafting Patrick. Andy traded up to draft Patrick Mahomes. It's not like he fell in his lap and was like, oh, I guess we'll take Patrick. No, he traded up to get Patrick Mahomes. And then he did the smart thing and went to Patrick's college and learned the offense that fit him best and started incorporating those things into his offense to help him out so that he could hit the ground running. He did everything he could to make Patrick Mahomes successful, 100%. And he traded up for him. I don't think he got lucky in getting Patrick Mahomes. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, he's done it everywhere he went. I mean, he picked Donovan McNabb when that wasn't the fan favorite pick, and, you know, had a lot of success with Donovan McNabb. While he was there and he had Donovan McNabb, he picked Kevin Kolb in the second round, I remember, and was able to trade him for like a third round pick or get like a high draft capital for him. He's really good at picking quarterbacks. Like, that's just something he's been amazing at his whole career.
Yeah, for sure. On the goal line says Mr. Irrelevant being compared to Pickett is just a credit to how good Brock is. A first round pick in a seventh round being compared is hilarious, but it's valid. No, it's definitely valid. It is definitely valid. And I would say for the value, the Steelers easily would take Brock Purdy round 7 over Pickett round 1. I don't think there's any debate there. If that's the argument, I don't think anybody's debating that one. So, all right, if the 49ers are to win this game, who needs to play well to make that happen?
I'll let you go first, because I'd be taking your fire every now and then.
I know I do like to go second, but for me, I think McKivitz is going to have to play well, at least respectable. I'm not saying he can't give up any pressures, but he can't be a turnstile over at right tackle. That cannot happen. If he can't even hold his own a little bit in one-on-one matchups with Watt, who he's going to see a majority of that game, the 49ers are going to be in some serious trouble, very serious trouble. So I would say he's number 1, and then number 2 would be CMC for me. I think CMC should play well, but if for some reason the right tackle or somebody else is a turnstile over there, then that means CMC is going to have to be a big part of this pass game, dump off game. Obviously, the run game is one thing, but, you know, if you look at it, CMC is like the ultimate safety valve. If the defense is getting too much pressure, CMC can help you out. If you can't run the ball, but you need the short passing game to be your run game, CMC's your guy. Like, he really solves a lot of problems. So for me, those are the two that I am looking for to have big games. McKivitz has to be able to hold his own against Watt, and CMC obviously has to do CMC things.
Okay. I'll pick two players on the opposite side of the ball.
I love it. Okay.
Javon Hargrave and Arik Armstead. You two are the highest paid players on the defensive side of the ball. Hargrave, you came in as our, splash free agent signing that was going to take this team over the hump. Armstead, you have a contract that some would say you haven't played all the way up to because of the production isn't there as far as stats, even though I think that's kind of harsh criticism because there's a lot that I think he does really, really well that doesn't make the stat sheet. But with Nick Bosa most likely not going to be playing week 1, you guys are the anchors of this defensive line. This team still relies on the defensive line for this defense to be really, really good. Bosa obviously is a huge loss of talent, but it's time for you guys to step up and say, yo, we are talented as well. Armstead, you've been a captain on this team for a long time. Hargrave, you got to prove that you were worth the money that the 49ers went and paid you. And even though Bosa is not there, it's not that Cleveland Farrell and Drake Jackson, who most likely will be starters on the outside. Cleveland Farrell is a first-round pick. Drake Jackson is a second-round pick. Be the anchors on the defensive line. You two go out there, command double teams, make that interior so tough that it gives the ability for these outside guys to have that type of success. They should be able to step up, and they need to step up in a game like this, especially when Bosa's out. So those two, I think if they have amazing games, maybe this defense still looks really, really good, Jesse.
Yeah, and I think the 49ers can manufacture pressure for a game or two without Bosa through blitzing and what have you. For me, I want to see those guys step up in the run game big time because that's what we've kind of seen this offseason is how they've been gashed in the run game. And for as good as Hargrave is, it's interesting. When he started his career in Pittsburgh, he was kind of more of a run stopper. Now he's turned into a pass rusher from the interior, and the run stopping is not that great. I mean, that's something that Armstead, we can talk about Armstead all we want. Somebody asked, how the hell does he make $24 million with 0 sacks? That's for the 49ers. But one thing I will say about Armstead, for as annoying as it can be that he doesn't produce a lot in the pass rushing side, at least statistically, his run defense is top notch. Very, very high level run defense. And so for me, he's got to do that this weekend, and then Hargrave has to be able to hold his own, and then as do the backup defensive tackles. If those guys are getting pushed around, it's going to be a long day for the 49ers. We know the 49ers, they want to win time of possession. They want to impose their will. The Steelers are going to try to do the same thing, and if the Steelers are able to do that, then there's a good chance that they win this game. So I'm looking at those two in the run defense as well, for sure.
Yep. And then last but not least, our guy, Jake Moody. Jake Moody, it could come. Hey, I've called out there's going to be 2 games that Jake Moody decides for the 49ers and gets us that victory. Maybe week 1 maybe he can knock week 1 off of that list because it possibly could be a really close game. One of those long field goals to win the game. That would be awesome and epic.
That would be epic. Talk about a slump buster. That would definitely be it. No doubt about it. All right. We've talked about the game, and I'm going to be asking this to the guests all week. I want to hear everybody's prediction when it comes to the Steelers and 49ers. Who are you picking to win this game, and what is the score?
I think that there's been a lot of drama circulating around the 49ers this offseason. I know that the team says they don't pay attention, but we know the team watches Grant. We know the team watches you, Jesse. We know the team watches, a lot of the shows here. the way that the 49ers have been able to overcome these tumultuous off seasons, which they've seemed that they've had year after year after year, is go out there and just win, right? And I think that there's a lot of players on this team that have a lot to prove, including guys that we've mentioned on this, and Purdy being one of them, and I think Debo and Ayuk and Warner, and we haven't even talked about some of these. Fred Warner's kind of been lost. Like, we're not even talking about Fred Warner's impact this season. But to me, I think that the 49ers are going to take all of the criticism that they've been hearing, and Purdy's going to internalize all of the stuff that's been circulating from the fan base, and I think they come out and they have a very strong showing. I think that the 49ers are going to get a victory. I think the score is going to be something like 24-17. 49ers get the dub.
I like it. We're getting some score predictions. Actually, a lot of people picking the Steelers. Interesting. All right.
Well, it is your fan base, Jesse.
Yeah, for sure. I actually am going to hold off on my prediction.
Oh, my gosh.
Behind enemy lines. This is a cliffhanger. This in the biz is what they call a cliffhanger. No, I'm going to hold off because I'm going to be going live tomorrow with the Pittsburgh Steelers content creator. And actually, it might be two of them. They're brothers. Twin City Steelers, I believe, is the name of the channel. You can go check them out. But they are going to be coming on the show. At least one of them is. And I'm going to reserve the right to make my prediction with the Steelers right there live. We've got this Steelers fan base. We'll be intermingling with the 49ers fan base. So I'm going to hold off. That's the tease for tomorrow. Make sure you tap in for that. Before then, though, I will be back with Ryan tomorrow at noon Eastern. Tomorrow night with Grant, 49ers After Dark. And then right after that, Behind Enemy Lines with a Steelers content creator. Cannot wait for that show. Sunil, as always, brother, thank you so much. Have a blessed night, everybody in the chat. And we will be back at it tomorrow. Peace.